I used to think I'd hit the jackpot when Avonstone Solutions hired me. But 3 years later, the CEO fired me right before my promotion, without a single explanation. A few months after that, they lost $7.2 million. And I was the reason. They thought they could discard me like trash, erase my contributions, pretend I never existed. They were wrong. What they didn't know was that sometimes the most devastating revenge comes from the shadows, delivered by someone they'd already forgotten. My name is Rachel Monroe, and I'm about to tell you how I brought down a multi-million-dollar company from my one-bedroom apartment in Cleveland. At 34, I thought I understood the rules of corporate America. Work hard, deliver results, climb the ladder. Simple, right? God, I was naive. Avonstone Solutions wasn't just any tech company. They specialized in financial software for regional banks, the kind of niche market where relationships meant everything and one contract could make or break a quarter. When I joined as a financial strategy analyst 3 years ago, I felt like I'd finally made it. The salary was decent. The office gleamed with that startup meets corporate polish, and the CEO, Graham Wexler, gave speeches about empowering talent and building careers, not just filling positions. I believed every word. The first year, I threw myself into the work with the kind of enthusiasm only the truly desperate possess. See, I'd come from a string of dead-end jobs, always the smartest person in the room, but never the one who got noticed. Avonstone was supposed to be different, and for a while, it seemed like it was. My analyses caught the attention of senior management. My revenue projections were so accurate they started calling me the Oracle, though never to my face. Only in those casual mentions I'd overhear by the coffee machine. But here's the thing about being good at your job in corporate America, especially as a woman: excellence makes you useful, not powerful. It makes you a tool, not a leader. I learned this the hard way, project by project, as my ideas mysteriously became team efforts led by Thomas Calley, a mediocre analyst who happened to golf with the CFO every Sunday. The pattern was always the same. I'd identify an opportunity, build the financial model, create the presentation. Thomas would schedule an alignment meeting where he'd nod thoughtfully at my work, then present it to the executives without me in the room. By the time the accolades came down, my spreadsheets had become Thomas's strategic vision, and I was merely mentioned as part of the supporting team. I kept telling myself it was fine. Recognition would come eventually. My work spoke for itself. These were the lies I whispered to my reflection in the bathroom mirror after particularly brutal days, when my jaw ached from smiling through another meeting where my ideas were praised from someone else's mouth. The Cleveland office had that peculiar Midwest corporate culture, aggressively friendly on the surface, ruthlessly political underneath. Everyone said please and thank you, while sharpening knives behind their backs. Graham Wexler embodied this perfectly. He'd remember your kid's name, ask about your sick parent, then eliminate your position without blinking if it improved the quarterly numbers by 0.5%. By my 3rd year, I'd built myself into something indispensable, or so I thought. My financial strategies had landed 3 major contracts worth over $20 million. I'd identified cost savings that boosted our profit margins by 12%. The promotion to senior financial strategist wasn't just expected, it was overdue. That's when the whispers started, hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the break room. Calendar invites for meetings I wasn't included in. The HR director, usually chatty, suddenly too busy to grab lunch. Looking back, the signs were obvious. But when you're in it, when you still believe in fairness and meritocracy and all that corporate bullshit they feed you in orientation, you explain it away. They're planning a surprise for your promotion announcement. They're restructuring the department to give you more responsibility. They're planning to destroy you. But I didn't know that yet. I still believed in Avonstone Solutions, in Graham Wexler's vision, in the American dream that hard work conquers all. I was about to learn that in corporate America, being good at your job isn't enough. Sometimes it's exactly what gets you fired. The climb up Avonstone's corporate ladder was a masterclass in swallowing pride. 3 years of watching my work transform into other people's victories, and I'd become an expert at the grateful smile, the supportive nod, the team player enthusiasm that made me safe enough to exploit. My first major win came 6 months into the job. A financial restructuring plan that saved Avonstone $2.3 million annually. I'd spent weeks analyzing our vendor contracts, identifying redundancies, negotiating better terms. The presentation took me 3 all-nighters to perfect. When I submitted it to my manager, Janet, she praised my thoroughness. When it reached the C-suite, it had her name on it. I got a special mention in the quarterly newsletter. Janet got a $50,000 bonus. "You're still learning the ropes," she told me over coffee, her voice dripping with fake mentorship. "This visibility would have been too much pressure for someone at your level. I'm protecting you." Really? I believed her. That's the embarrassing part. The second year brought bigger projects and bigger betrayals. The Midwest Regional Bank Consortium, a deal worth $8 million, was my baby from conception to close. I identified the opportunity through a connection from my previous job, built the relationship, designed the custom solution they needed. But when it came time to fly to Chicago for the final presentation, Thomas Callie suddenly needed me to stay back and hold down the fort. He returned with a promotion and a corner office. I got a 3% merit increase and a pat on the back. Rachel's exceptional at execution. I overheard him telling Graham at the holiday party. I just have to point her in the right direction, and she delivers every time. The worst part? He probably believed it. Men like Thomas always do. They convince themselves that leadership is about having ideas, not doing work. And since my ideas became theirs the moment I shared them, they genuinely thought they were the visionaries. By year 3, I'd learned to document everything, every email, every meeting note, every brilliant fucking insight that would inevitably be stolen. Not out of paranoia, I still believed justice existed in corporate America. But because I thought when promotion time came, I'd have proof of my contributions. Naive doesn't begin to cover it. The pattern had become so predictable, it was almost boring. I'd identify an opportunity, create a comprehensive strategy, build the financial models that made everyone's eyes glaze over but guaranteed success. Present to my immediate team. Watch Thomas schedule a follow-up with leadership where my PowerPoints would magically transform into his vision, my spreadsheets into his analysis, my months of work into his 15-minute triumph. But I kept pushing. When the Patterson Group contract looked dead, I spent 2 months rebuilding our pricing model from scratch, found a way to cut costs without sacrificing quality, and salvaged a $5 million deal everyone had written off. When our biggest client threatened to leave over service issues, I created a retention strategy that not only kept them, but expanded our contract by 40%. Each success felt like a step closer to recognition. Each stolen credit felt like a test of my persistence. I told myself stories about every successful woman who'd ever been overlooked before finally breaking through. I was paying my dues, building my resume, proving my worth. What I was actually doing was making myself too valuable in my current position. Why promote someone who does the work of 3 people without complaining? Why give a title and salary to match the contribution when you can get it for bargain basement prices? The breaking point came when I overheard Thomas in the men's room. Yeah, the acoustics in our office were shit, talking to another manager about the upcoming restructure. "Graham's finally going to pull the trigger on Rachel," he said. "About time. She's getting too comfortable, starting to ask questions about promotion timelines. You know how they get when they think they deserve something." "But isn't she critical for the Ferguson project?" Thomas laughed. "Please, I've been managing her work for 3 years. I could do it with my eyes closed. Hell. Might even improve efficiency without all her overthinking." I stood frozen in the hallway, feeling something inside me shift. Not break, that would come later. But shift, like tectonic plates realigning before an earthquake. They weren't stringing me along anymore. They were planning to cut me loose, and Thomas, mediocre, lazy, credit-stealing Thomas, thought he could do my job. Let him try. The Tuesday morning they fired me started like any other. Coffee at 7:15, emails by 7:30, first spreadsheet open by 7:45. I was deep in the Ferguson project analysis when Janet knocked on my cubicle wall with that particular expression HR trains them to wear. Professional concern mixed with emotional distance. Graham would like to see you in his office. No context, no smile. Just those 9 words that made my stomach drop through the floor. The walk to the executive suite felt both endless and too quick. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe Thomas had been wrong. Maybe this was about the promotion. Maybe Graham's office smelled like leather and expensive cologne, the kind of masculine performance that passed for leadership in places like Avonstone. He sat behind his massive desk, hands folded, that practiced smile already in place. The same smile from company meetings where he talked about our family culture and growth opportunities. Rachel, please sit. The head of HR, Marcus, stood by the window like a funeral director. That's when I knew. I'll cut right to the chase, Graham said, his voice smooth as poison. We're implementing a strategic restructuring, and unfortunately, your position has been identified as redundant. Redundant. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, of salvaged contracts and saved millions, reduced to a single corporate euphemism. I don't understand, I managed, though I understood perfectly. The Ferguson project alone requires. Thomas will be absorbing your responsibilities. Graham interrupted. He's assured me he can handle the transition seamlessly. The laugh that escaped me was bitter enough to cut glass. Thomas can't even open my financial models without crashing Excel. Graham's smile tightened. I'm sorry you feel that way. However, the decision has been made. Marcus will discuss your exit terms. That's when Marcus stepped forward with a folder I'd later realize was deliberately thin. Due to some concerns about your handling of confidential information, we're unable to offer the standard severance package. What concerns? My voice had gone deadly quiet. There have been irregularities in your access patterns to sensitive files. Nothing criminal. Of course, but enough to violate our security protocols. Bullshit. Complete, fabricated bullshit. But they'd done their homework. Somewhere in the employee handbook's 500 pages of legalese, they'd found a clause elastic enough to deny me severance. You have 2 hours to clear your desk. Marcus continued. Security will escort you. I looked at Graham then, really looked at him. Saw past the tailored suit and leadership seminar vocabulary to the small man underneath who'd probably made this same calculation dozens of times. Find the talent, exploit the talent, discard the talent before they demand their worth. Why? I asked. Not begging, just curious. The real reason? Graham's mask slipped for just a second. You're very good at what you do. Rachel. Maybe too good. People like you make others uncomfortable. Sometimes it's better for everyone if we maintain a certain balance. There it was. The truth wrapped in corporate doublespeak. I'd committed the unforgivable sin of being competent while female, ambitious while underpaid, essential while expendable. 2 hours, Marcus repeated. The security guard who escorted me back, Dale, who I'd chatted with every morning for 3 years, couldn't meet my eyes. I packed my personal items while my colleagues pretended to be absorbed in their screens. Only Amanda from accounting risked a sympathetic glance. Everyone else had already gotten the memo. Rachel Monroe was radioactive. I saved my files to a thumb drive, personal notes, nothing proprietary, though they'd spin it differently if needed. 3 years of my life fit into a cardboard box small enough to carry with one hand. Thomas wasn't at his desk, probably hiding until I was gone. The coward. As Dale walked me through the lobby for the last time, past the mission statement etched in glass about integrity and excellence, I felt something inside me crystallize. Not rage, that would come later, in waves. Not even humiliation. Though that burned too. It was clarity. They thought they were disposing of a problem, eliminating a threat, teaching a lesson to anyone else who might forget their place. They thought I'd slink away, defeated and silenced by their legal maneuvering and professional gaslighting, another casualty of corporate America's casual cruelty. Too broken to fight back, too small to matter. Graham's parting words echoed as I pushed through the revolving door into the Cleveland morning. I'm sure you'll land on your feet, Rachel. People like you always do. People like me. He had no idea what people like me were capable of when cornered, but he was about to learn. The first week after Avonstone, I did what any reasonable person would do. I fell apart, sent out resumes with the mechanical persistence of muscle memory, refreshed LinkedIn obsessively, drank wine at 2 p.m. because who was going to stop me? But underneath the standard post-firing depression, something else was happening. A plan forming in the corners of my mind like frost on a window, delicate, intricate, and sharp enough to cut. It started with the files. Not stolen files, I wasn't that stupid. But in 3 years of documenting everything to protect myself from credit theft, I'd accumulated a vast personal archive. Meeting notes typed on my personal laptop during lunch breaks, financial analyses I drafted at home on weekends, email threads forwarded to my Gmail for reference, all perfectly legal, all painting a very specific picture of how Avonstone really operated. The rage came in waves. I'd be brushing my teeth and suddenly remember Thomas taking credit for my work in front of the board, making breakfast, and flash back to Graham's condescending smile. The fury would hit so hard I'd have to sit down, breathe through it like contractions. But rage without purpose is just self-destruction. I needed to channel it. The breakthrough came when I ran into Meredith Chen at a coffee shop in Shaker Heights. She'd left Avonstone a year before, and the rumor was she'd been pushed out for asking too many questions about their licensing agreements. We'd never been close. Avonstone didn't encourage female solidarity, but mutual exile creates its own bond. How's the job search? She asked, sliding into the seat across from me. About what you'd expect. I stirred my coffee, debating how much to reveal. Actually, I've been thinking about consulting, maybe helping companies identify financial vulnerabilities. Her laugh was knowing. Vulnerabilities like the ones at Avonstone? I couldn't possibly comment on former employers, I said carefully. But hypothetically, if a company were using unlicensed software modifications in their client deployments, Meredith's eyes sharpened. That would be a major SEC violation. Hypothetically, we talked for 2 hours. Carefully. Hypothetically, about software licenses and client contracts, about how Avonstone's rapid growth had led to corner cutting, about Graham's habit of promising custom features that required proprietary code they didn't actually have rights to use. I learned Meredith had kept records too. Names, dates, version numbers that wouldn't mean anything to most people, but would make a forensic auditor's heart race. You know, she said as we parted, I heard Harrison Financial is switching vendors. Their CTO is always interested in competitive intelligence, legally obtained, of course. The next 3 weeks, I became a researcher. Not Googling from my couch in pajamas, but systematic intelligence gathering. I called former colleagues under the pretense of networking, had coffee with industry contacts, attended a financial tech conference where loose lips and open bars created a perfect storm of information. Every conversation added a piece to the puzzle. Avonstone's biggest client contract had a clause about proprietary software. Their Series D funding round, scheduled for next quarter, hinged on due diligence that assumed clean intellectual property. Thomas had been bragging about a new deployment that I knew with mathematical certainty, used code they'd lifted from a competitor. I created a timeline, cross-referenced public statements with internal knowledge, built a financial model showing exactly how much each violation could cost them, not in the angry scrawl of a disgruntled employee, but with the cold precision of someone who'd spent 3 years inside their financial architecture. The beautiful part? I wouldn't have to lie, wouldn't have to steal, wouldn't even have to exaggerate. The truth, properly presented, would be devastating enough. But truth needs an audience. I made a list of possibilities. The SEC, obvious but slow. Competitors, useful but limited. Journalists, tempting but risky. The upcoming investors, now that had potential. But I'd need to be surgical. Anonymous. Untraceable. Late at night. I'd lie in bed running scenarios. What if they traced it back to me? What if no one cared? What if Graham and Thomas just slithered away to destroy another company, another career, another woman who'd made the mistake of being too good at her job? No, I wouldn't let that happen. I thought about Rachel from 3 years ago, bright-eyed and grateful for the opportunity. Rachel from 2 years ago, swallowing her pride as her ideas became Thomas's victories. Rachel from 1 year ago, still believing promotion was just around the corner. They'd created this version of me, the one who understood that corporate America's real currency wasn't talent or hard work, it was information and the willingness to use it. Graham thought he'd eliminated a threat by firing me. He'd actually created one. I opened a new Proton Mail account, started organizing my files with meticulous care. The time for falling apart was over. It was time to show them what people like me could do. The execution began on a Thursday at 3 a.m. I'd chosen the time deliberately, late enough that no one would be monitoring systems, early enough that automated reports would catch the uploads before dawn. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened the anonymous email account, but my mind was clear as crystal. The first email went to the SEC whistleblower office. 12 attachments. Financial records showing Avonstone had been deploying unlicensed Oracle database modifications in their banking software since 2019. Screenshots of internal emails where Graham explicitly instructed the dev team to make it work, regardless of licensing. A detailed analysis of how this violated their contracts with 3 major clients. Conservative estimate of liability, $4.8 million. The second email landed in the inbox of Jessica Liu, senior tech reporter at Tech Beacon. I'd followed her work for years. She had a nose for corporate malfeasance and the technical knowledge to understand what she was looking at. The subject line was simple. Avonstone Solutions, the 7.2 secret they don't want you to know. But the real surgical strike was the third email. Northbridge Capital was set to lead Avonstone's Series D round next month. $50 million investment at a $400 million valuation. I'd been in the meetings where Graham pitched them. I knew exactly what due diligence they'd completed, and more importantly, what they'd missed. Dear Ms. Patterson, prior to your firm's investment in Avonstone Solutions, you may wish to review the attached documentation regarding undisclosed software licensing violations and potential SEC compliance issues. A conservative estimate puts the immediate legal liability at $7.2 million, not including potential criminal penalties for executives who knowingly authorize the violations. I've included forensic analysis of their codebase, comparative licensing agreements, and a timeline of executive communications acknowledging the violations. A concerned industry observer 24 minutes after sending. I watched the read receipts pop up. Jessica Liu opened hers at 6:47 a.m. The SEC acknowledged receipt at 7:15. But it was the Northbridge response that made my heart race, not an automated receipt, but a terse email from Patricia Patterson herself. Information received, reviewing with counsel. I closed the laptop and made breakfast, hands steady now. The die was cast. The story broke Monday morning. Jessica had done her homework, contacted sources, verified everything. The headline was even better than I'd hoped. Avonstone Solutions faces SEC investigation over massive software licensing fraud. I read it at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold as I absorbed every delicious detail. She'd found 3 former employees willing to go on record. She'd gotten Oracle to confirm they were reviewing potential violations. Most damning. She'd obtained a quote from a source close to the Series D funding round that Northbridge had frozen all investment pending investigation. My phone buzzed with texts from former colleagues. Did you see? Holy shit. Graham must be losing his mind. I responded to none of them. By noon, it was trending on fintech Twitter. By 2 p.m., Avonstone had released a defensive statement about reviewing their licensing procedures and cooperating fully with any investigations. By 4 p.m., their stock had dropped 18%. Tuesday brought new revelations. Once blood was in the water, everyone wanted a bite. Former employees came forward with stories of other violations. A competitor filed a lawsuit alleging stolen code. The Ohio State Attorney General announced they were monitoring the situation. But the killing blow came Wednesday. Patterson Capital didn't just pull out of the Series D, they released a statement distancing themselves entirely from Avonstone, citing fundamental concerns about corporate governance and executive integrity. Without that funding round, Avonstone couldn't make payroll past next quarter. They'd been counting on that money to paper over their burn rate. I sat in a Starbucks downtown, laptop open to LinkedIn, watching the disaster unfold in real time. Avonstone employees updating their profiles, recruiters circling like vultures. Thomas Callie's page still proudly listed his title, but I knew that wouldn't last long. The final tally came out 2 weeks later in a forensic accounting report leaked to the press. Between the SEC fines, legal settlements, and lost contracts, Avonstone was facing $7.2 million in immediate liabilities, exactly what I'd calculated in my initial report. The precision of it made me smile. Graham Wexler resigned to pursue other opportunities. The board brought in a crisis management CEO. Thomas Callie was quietly let go in the second round of restructuring. His LinkedIn eventually updated to seeking new opportunities in financial strategy. He lasted exactly 17 days longer than I had. Without my models, my strategies, my relationships holding things together, he'd been exposed for what he was, a mediocre man who'd built his career on superior women's stolen work. I never gloated publicly, never posted about karma or justice on social media, never reached out to Graham or Thomas to twist the knife. The beauty of perfect revenge is that it doesn't need acknowledgement. It just needs to work. 3 months later, Avonstone Solutions was acquired for parts by a competitor. Purchase price, $62 million. Less than the Series D valuation by more than $300 million. The Cleveland office closed, most of the staff scattered to the wind. I'd started my new consulting firm by then. Turns out, helping companies identify financial vulnerabilities was exactly as lucrative as I'd suspected. My first client? A regional bank that had been considering Avonstone's software. We dodged a bullet, their CFO told me. Thank God someone exposed those criminals before we signed anything. I smiled and agreed. Thank God indeed. The collapse of Avonstone Solutions unfolded like a Shakespearean tragedy. Except the protagonists deserved every moment of their downfall. I watched from my apartment, refreshing news sites with the dedication of a day trader tracking a crash. The SEC investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Turns out, when you hand federal investigators a roadmap of violations complete with evidence and analysis, they don't need months to build a case. Within 3 weeks, they'd frozen Avonstone's primary accounts pending forensic accounting. The employees felt it first. Payday came and went with only an apologetic email about temporary delays in payroll processing. My former colleagues who'd avoided me in those final hours were suddenly very interested in reconnecting. Did I know anyone hiring? Could I put in a good word? Had I heard what was really happening? I helped where I could. Not everyone at Avonstone had been complicit. The junior analysts, the admin staff, the developers who'd raised concerns only to be silenced. They were collateral damage in Graham's empire of ego. I made introductions, wrote recommendations, but I never revealed what I knew about the source of their misfortune. The real spectacle began when the lawsuits started piling up. First, 3 major clients terminated contracts, citing breach of warranty clauses. Harrison Financial didn't just leave, they sued for damages, claiming Avonstone's unlicensed software had exposed them to regulatory risk. Meridian Bank followed suit, then Cornerstone Credit Union. Each lawsuit revealed new details. Harrison's filing included internal Avonstone emails where Thomas had assured them the software was fully compliant, while Graham pushed the tech team to hide licensing logs. Meridian's lawyers had somehow obtained, I wondered how, a complete analysis showing their potential exposure exceeded $2 million. The media feast was glorious. TechBeacon ran daily updates. The Wall Street Journal picked up the story. How a rising fintech star burned $400 million in value became required reading in business schools. Graham's smiling corporate headshot became the visual shorthand for executive fraud. But the moment I'd been waiting for came on a Tuesday afternoon. Thomas Calley, trying to salvage his career, went on a local business podcast to share his side of the story. I listened with a glass of wine, savoring every desperate word. "The truth is, I inherited a mess," he claimed. "When Rachel Monroe left, we discovered significant irregularities in her work. I tried to fix things, but the damage was done." The interviewer, to his credit, pushed back. "But the SEC report shows these violations date back 3 years. Weren't you overseeing this department?" Thomas stuttered through a non-answer about complex team dynamics and trusting the wrong people. He actually tried to suggest I'd been the mastermind behind the licensing fraud, that my sudden departure was suspicious. The podcast comment section tore him apart. Former employees called him out by name. One commenter posted screenshots of Thomas taking credit for my work in company newsletters. Another linked to his LinkedIn, where he'd bragged about deals I'd closed. Within 48 hours, Thomas had deleted all his social media. Too late. The internet never forgets, and screenshots live forever. Graham tried a different strategy: complete silence. His lawyers had clearly advised him that anything he said could become evidence. But silence in the digital age is its own statement. While he hid, the board of directors released a scathing report blaming a culture of deception at the executive level for the company's collapse. The final numbers were staggering. SEC fines, $3.1 million. Legal settlements, $2.8 million. Lost contracts and abandoned deals, $1.3 million. Emergency audit and compliance costs, $400,000. Total damage, $7.2 million. Exactly as predicted. The acquisition announcement came on a gray Thursday morning. Pinnacle Systems, a competitor Graham had publicly mocked as yesterday's technology, bought Avonstone's assets for $62 million. The IP, the client list, the technology, everything except the toxic leadership and poisoned culture. They offered jobs to most of the engineering team. The sales staff found new positions quickly. But management, the executives who'd enabled Graham's empire, they became radioactive. Too risky to hire, too visible to hide. I saw Graham once more, 6 months later. I was meeting a client at a hotel bar in downtown Cleveland when he walked in. Cheaper suit, exhaustion written in every line of his face. He was with someone who looked like a lawyer, probably discussing the criminal charges that were still pending. Our eyes met across the room. For a second, I saw recognition flicker. Did he know? Did he suspect? I raised my glass slightly. A toast to justice served cold. He turned away, shoulders hunching like a man who'd learned what it meant to be powerless. The bartender appeared at my elbow. "Another champagne?" "Yes," I said, still watching Graham's retreating back. "I'm celebrating." "Special occasion?" I smiled. "You could say I'm watching the end of a very long project. Everything worked out exactly as planned." The Avonstone Solutions sign came down from the Cleveland office building the next week. By then, I had 3 new clients and a waiting list. Turns out, there's huge demand for consultants who can identify corporate vulnerabilities, especially the kind that hide in plain sight, protected by arrogance and enabled by cultures that mistake cruelty for strength. Every company has secrets. And every Graham Wexler creates a Rachel Monroe. They just don't always realize it until it's too late. I'm sitting in that same coffee shop in Columbus now, the one where I used to draft my revenge between job applications. Different table, though, the corner booth with a view of the street, the kind of spot someone picks when they've learned to watch their surroundings. The Wall Street Journal lies folded beside my laptop. Former Avonstone CEO Graham Wexler pleads guilty to securities fraud. 18 months probation, $500,000 in fines. No jail time. Men like Graham rarely see the inside of a cell. But his reputation, his career, his carefully constructed kingdom, ashes. Thomas Calley teaches part-time at a community college now. Business ethics, ironically. I learned this from Amanda, who stayed in touch after everything went down. She said he looks older, humbled, still wearing suits that don't quite fit, still trying to project authority he never earned. He actually uses Avonstone as a case study, she told me over lunch last week. Talks about the importance of intellectual property compliance, never mentions his role, of course. I smiled at that. Let him teach about his own downfall. Let every semester remind him of what hubris costs. My consulting firm has 7 employees now. I hired 2 former Avonstone engineers who'd been laid off in the collapse. Good people who'd been trapped in a bad system. We do legitimate work, helping companies identify vulnerabilities before they become disasters. Sometimes those vulnerabilities are technical. Sometimes they're human. Graham Wexler-shaped blind spots that companies don't realize they have until it's too late. I never talk about Avonstone unless asked directly. When potential clients Google me, they find a professional who left a position right before a major corporate scandal. The timing looks fortunate, not suspicious. Nobody connects the anonymous whistleblower to the woman who rebuilt herself from their ashes. That's the beauty of perfect revenge. It's invisible. There's a satisfaction in this ending that has nothing to do with their downfall and everything to do with my rise. I don't check Graham's LinkedIn anymore. Don't follow the scattered remnants of Avonstone's leadership. That chapter is closed, the debt paid in full. But sometimes, late at night when I'm reviewing contracts or building financial models, I think about that morning in Graham's office. The practiced smile, the casual cruelty. People like you make others uncomfortable. He was right, in a way he never intended. People like me do make others uncomfortable. We see through the bullshit. We document the crimes. We remember every slight, every stolen idea, every casual humiliation designed to keep us in our place. And when pushed too far, we push back with precision that makes $7.2 million in damages look like a rounding error. I close the newspaper, finish my coffee. Tomorrow I have a meeting with a Fortune 500 company concerned about their compliance procedures. They heard about my work through word of mouth, the best kind of marketing in this business. They don't know my history, just my results. The barista, the same one who served me during those desperate weeks after my firing, catches my eye. Another refill? No thanks, I'm done here. And I mean it. Done with this coffee shop that holds too many memories. Done with Cleveland. Maybe. Done with being the kind of person who accepts injustice as the price of ambition. I leave a generous tip and gather my things. Outside, the city moves with its usual Midwest determination. People hustling to jobs where they'll work too hard for too little recognition. Some of them, probably, dealing with their own Graham Wexlers, their own Thomas Callies. I want to tell them it doesn't have to end with a cardboard box and a security escort. That sometimes, if you're smart and patient and willing to embrace the darkness they create in you, you can write a different ending. But revenge isn't a story you share at networking events. It's a secret you carry like a weapon you'll probably never need again, but could use if necessary. My phone buzzes. A new client, eager to discuss their needs. I slide into my car, checking the rearview mirror out of habit now. Always watching, always ready. Graham thought he was teaching me a lesson about power when he fired me. He was right, just not the lesson he intended. He taught me that in corporate America, being good isn't enough. Being right isn't enough. Even being essential isn't enough. But being dangerous? Being the kind of person who can cost you $7.2 million from a laptop in their living room? That's enough. That's more than enough. I drive away from the coffee shop, from the memories, from the person I used to be. In the rearview mirror, Cleveland shrinks but never quite disappears. Some ghosts you don't exorcise, you weaponize them. And if that makes people uncomfortable, good. They should be. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're listening from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories like this, and share your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with a toxic workplace? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments.